Welcome to the FierceLab podcast, the show where we interview people who love their jobs and discuss career growth, fearless leadership, and creating a life you love. I'm your host, Kelly Poquiz Burke, a marketer turned executive coach, and I'm here to help you lead with courage and slay the fear in career. If you're a fan of these conversations and want to dive deeper into your own career and leadership questions, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com. Tara Wilson is the CEO and founder of Tara Wilson Agency, an experiential marketing firm that's redefined brand engagement for clients like Nike, Samsung, and ESPN. A former financial advisor at Merrill Lynch turned entrepreneur, Tara is also the creator of FierceLab, a podcast and platform empowering women in career, money, and mental health. Her agency has twice made the Inc. 5000 list, and she's been named Entrepreneur of the Year by Auburn University. Listening to Tara's story was so insightful. Her journey from small-town Arkansas to successful agency CEO showcases the power of owning your destiny. Her career evolved from finance to event planning to experiential marketing, demonstrating how you can reinvent yourself multiple times. When you find your passion and recognize the transferable skills you've gained, it can help you successfully pivot. Through FierceLab, she now empowers young professional women with resources she wished she'd had. Her advice to get a compass, not a watch, reminds us to focus on the direction rather than the timing. Hi, Tara. Welcome to FierceLab.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, Kelly.
We've known each other for a little bit of time now, but I'm so excited for our audience to dig into your story because you have an amazing story. So let's just dive right in.
Sure.
What was your childhood like, and tell us what you were like as a kid?
Yeah, no, I love that you're starting with this. You're like, take us all the way back. And I'm like, oh, wow. But I love that. So I was raised on a farm in Northwest Arkansas in a town of 1,400 people. So at my heart, I'm a small town girl who was raised in the country. I wasn't even raised in the city of our little town. And so I think what's defining about that experience, and I should also mention, I have a brother who's almost 9 years older than me. So by the time I moved into the third grade, he'd gone off to college. So in certain ways, I was sort of raised as an only child. My parents were older, so I was taken along, and being that I was their only kid at home, I was taught to be seen and not heard, and I was privy to a lot of adult conversations. So I think of myself in that way, that I probably matured quicker than others at my age, that in my peer group. And then being raised in the country, I had to use my imagination a lot. I often tell people, my mother would say on Saturdays, like, get outside. Go outside and play, because A, she wanted some time alone, and B, she wanted to mop the floors in the house and didn't want me tracking dirt everywhere and those sorts of things. So it defined for me that at an early age, I started to use my creativity, which layers into who I am today. My parents are the backbone of our family. They're both extremely hardworking, middle-class people, and they certainly put a big value on giving back to community. And so I think that also has shaped me as an adult. I always tell people I used to play business as a kid. I'd go down into our basement and played business. Yeah, I had a telephone and a typewriter and a 10-key calculator, and all these things, and carbon copy paper back when that was still a thing. And I just would pretend to be a business owner. I don't even know. I just played business. My mother would get so mad because back in the late 70s, early 80s, when a credit card company sent you a credit card in the mail, they weren't fake. They were real. They were real credit cards that all you had to do was activate and you could use them. So she put them in the trash, and I'd dig them out and put them in my little pretend wallet because, that was to me a symbol of a business owner.
Yeah.
She was so fearful that those were going to get out in the wild and, activated that she got smart and started cutting them up. But yeah, that's my childhood. A lot of imagination.
Yeah, you have always had this entrepreneurial spirit,
Yes.
even from the get-go. That's incredible. So what did you study in school?
Well, I went to Auburn University and I studied finance. this is a situation where, you had to get a degree, you had to pick a degree. There's a guy from my hometown, a little bit older than my brother. But again, when you're in a town of 1,400 people, everyone knows everyone. And so he would come home not only from college, but after he graduated and started working at Merrill Lynch, he would come back to Arkansas and he'd see me while visiting my brother and he'd say, Tara, what do you want to do when you grow up? Oh, I don't know, maybe an engineer. Oh, you should look at finance, and that really stuck with me. And then someone else from my hometown also happened to work for Merrill Lynch, and a woman, and she was very successful, and I shadowed her in high school. And so what did I do? I went off to Auburn and I majored in finance. But I thought getting a finance degree would teach me how to be a stockbroker, essentially. And I learned quickly there is so much more to finance than how to pick and sell, buy and sell stocks and make investment decisions. And so it was a rapid education, I will say.
Wow. So tell us more about your career in finance. What was your first job out of college?
Well, I went to work for Merrill Lynch. So in college, I got that coveted internship that everybody was looking for. And as I was nearing graduation, I started interviewing with Merrill Lynch in 7 different cities, and I chose to move to Fort Worth. So I spent 10 years as a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch, and I tell people it was a great training ground for being an entrepreneur because there is probably no other business that does a better job in educating a young person on how to sell than Merrill Lynch. Mm-hmm. I got such amazing sales skills. Mm-hmm. And out of the gate, you're dealing with people who, when you come out of college, you're not making much money. You don't have much money. Most people don't. I didn't. But you are dealing with people who have money, and you've got to learn how to interact with them. And so even today, when I'm hiring for our team, I talk to candidates about the fact, can you deal with and can you speak to for people from all walks of life? And that goes back to my childhood and growing up in a small town and the way that environment was to, today being able to work with multi-million-dollar clients and industries. You've got to be able to span the gamut. And that's something I would have told my younger self, is you've got to know how to deal with all kinds of people. And if you're a judgmental person, life's going to be pretty tough.
Right. And that goes back into kind of what you were talking about, learning how to sell. So tell me a little bit more about what were some of those tips for, being a good salesman.
Yeah, sure. Or
salesperson.
Oh, well, there's so many little acronyms and things. And the one that always comes to mind is KISS, keep it simple, stupid, meaning don't oversell somebody. The definition of dump trucking is you let your own nerves take over, and you're just giving a person so much information. And when they say yes the first time, hear them and say, well, great, sign here and press hard. But Merrill taught us a lot about how to sell, and there was a lot of training. So everything from how to cold call, which is something I learned to do as a child. And I'd love to share that story and back up and tell you that. But Let me first finish this statement. Merrill taught me how to cold call. They gave me the skill sets to speak to people, to be able to feel confident in any setting. Even if I didn't have the information, they taught me how to address the fact that I didn't have the information, but that I could go find it. There was a lot of role playing. We would record ourselves. Those are just fantastic skill sets. One of my favorite books is Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. And it's a book for anyone. You don't have to be in sales. In fact, that is the kind of the upfront premise of the book, is that everyone is selling. Whether you're selling your spouse on coming in a relationship with you, or you're selling your boss on your next raise and or promotion, or you are truly selling a client. Everyone is in sales. So Sell or Be Sold is a great book that kind of helps those who aren't in sales to learn the skill sets that make them successful.
So tell me about the story about your childhood and you learning how to cold call.
Yeah. So probably in the second grade, my mother allowed me to get into Girl Scouts. And when I say allowed me, is I was so involved with other things that I had to beg to get into Girl Scouts as another thing. But we all know that the Girl Scouts in January sell cookies. That's a time-honored tradition. Well, again, that I'm from a very small town. My mother was a teacher. She taught for 45 years. So kids would normally take their cookie sheets, that was the sales sheet, to their parents' place of business and sell cookies that way. Well, every teacher gets hit up by every Girl Scout in our school. And so that wasn't really an option for me. So my mother sat me down at the dining room table and got out our teeny tiny little phone book. And she would say, why don't we call Billy Sue and Albert? These were good family friends. And so we would look their phone number up and then she'd call it out and I would dial it. And then Billy Sue would answer. And I would say, Billy Sue, this is Tara Metters, Tom and Wanda's daughter. Oh, hi, Tara. How are you? I'm good. I'm selling Girl Scout cookies and I wanted to know if you wanted to buy some. You know, I'm a second grader. This is like nerve-wracking, but my mother made me make the ask, you know, and it was such a smart move on her part. She told me who to call and she gave me that script. And then something really smart that she helped me do was we kept the cookie sheet. After that first year, I sold 142 boxes and I earned some giraffe-like stuffed animal. I'm very competitive. I'm very motivated by winning and reward. But we kept the cookie sheet, and the next year, I just went down the list. And I called Billy Sue back, and I said, Billy Sue, I'm selling cookies again. And last year, you bought 5 boxes, 2 Thin Mints and 2, you know, would you like to buy that again? And more times
she started
than not,
your CRM. She
That's
gave you a
right.
CRM.
That's right. But the best part of this story, and it really has an amazing lesson about fortitude, perseverance, grit, and I learned it as a second, third, and fourth grader, was there was one man in our town known for buying a case of cookies. And there was an older Girl Scout who always sold to him. And my mother knew he bought the case, and so my mother made me call him. And every year, he told me no, because he'd already bought his case of cookies. And so probably like the 4th year, I was just like dejected. But my mother's like, no, you have to call him. And I called him, and she wasn't selling cookies. She had gotten out of Girl Scouts, and he bought his case of cookies from me. And so that's my story about perseverance. And I learned it as a child, cold calling, selling Girl Scout cookies.
I love that. And I mean, there's so many great lessons in there, not just about perseverance, but also about like, you know, it's about putting in the reps. And the more no's you get, gets you closer to that yes, which I just love that story so much. So how did you transition from being in finance, from being a financial advisor into event planning?
Yeah. So somewhere along the way, I realized that, hey, maybe this wasn't the career for me. I wasn't feeling a lot of satisfaction. I wasn't seeing a lot of success, honestly. And that's my own fault, not anyone else's. It's just, it wasn't the right career field. I wasn't putting in those reps that you mentioned, and therefore I wasn't seeing the payoff. And it's a really hard job to do when you don't make much money doing it. And so I started working at one point with like a coach who had me put together a list of the top 100 things I wanted to do in my life. I still have that list. I don't share it publicly, but I have it, and occasionally I look at it. But one of those things on the list was own my own event planning business. Gets back to that creativity as a child, using my imagination, having to go outside, not having friends around to play. I could invent things in my head. I just became a very imaginative child that carried over into childhood. And every summer, I would say to myself, gosh, at Merrill Lynch, this isn't the career for me, but I couldn't really see my way out. And that's something I would tell young people is if you need to make a career change, a complete 180 from what it is that you're doing, what I didn't know and I wish I had known was you have transferable skills. And I didn't see that, and I didn't know how to account for those skills to be able to go to a new employer and say, yes, I had a career over here and want to completely change my career, but these are the things that would transfer and would make me successful. I didn't know how to articulate that. So if you're considering a career change, If you can't articulate it, get with someone that can help you, such as a career coach like you, Kelly, that could help someone do that for sure. But ultimately, what I would do is every summer, I would say, this is not what I want to be doing. And one summer I said, you know what? This is the last summer I'm having this conversation with myself. I have to figure this out. And I just started writing down things, one note at a time that interested me. And I got to the point where I was like looking at my bookshelf and I categorized the books that I was reading by category. Self-help. Well, I wasn't going to go back and get a degree to be a therapist. I had a lot of financial intelligence books on my bookshelf, of course, because the career I was in, but that wasn't the route I was going to take. And then I had a lot of design and planning and event planning books. And when I thought about that, my heart was set on fire. My imagination really ran wild, and it just clicked for me. That's what I needed to do. And so I spent 6 months banking my income because I was a newlywed, and my husband's like, you can quit your job, but we can't take on any debt. Understandable. So let's prove that we can live on one income by me banking my income, and then that'll give me a little seed money to start. And so for 6 months, I did that. And in February 2007, I went out on my own and started my own business. And guess what? The number one thing you got to do when you own your own business is sell yourself. You eat what you kill.
Yeah.
And so all those skills that I had learned just became very transferable.
So tell me more about what did you do in your event planning business?
Yeah, we did corporate, social, and nonprofit event planning. And the bulk of our business was weddings. And so those are one-offs. And, what I was finding was with our corporate work, I was coming in on January 1st knowing that our corporate clients were going to do X number of dollars with us every year. Even though they weren't retainer, they were projects that we were repeating. And a light bulb went off like, perhaps I should consider really just focusing on corporate events so that I can look to scale this business. And that was in the summer of 2014. I was like, okay, what's it going to look like to just focus on corporate? And there might be a pattern here. It seems like summertime is when I tend to evaluate things and do evaluations.
Yeah.
And it's no different today. It tends to be the time of year where I have the most clarity around the direction that I want to go. Most people do this in December. It comes to me in June, July, and August when it's hot as can be. And maybe I'm spending more time inside. But that summer, I started evaluating what it would take to shift the business. And I tell people that intuitively, I knew experiential marketing existed, but I didn't know, A, the name for it, and B, I had no idea that major corporations actually outsourced this service to experiential marketing agencies. And when I figured all of that out, it was another light bulb moment. It combined event planning, which I was fantastic at doing. I had a profound interest in marketing and the metrics behind the events. And so it combined that, and it allowed me to work on clients and work with clients that would allow my business to scale. And so it was a no-brainer. It was like, this is the direction to take the business.
That's so interesting how you kind of let your passions drive the moment to evolve the business into the next thing, because it started out as event planning and then it eventually shifted into marketing. So did you relaunch your company under Tara Wilson Agency at that point?
Yeah, very quietly. Very quietly. And by that, I mean, I believe it was January 2nd or 3rd of 2015, the woman that we work with that does all of our vinyl graphics came to my office and scraped my old logo off the door and put up the new one that was Tara Wilson Agency. So I also had built a new website, gotten all new branding and design, but I didn't make this big push around, hey, we're an agency now. Instead, I quietly went back to what I'd learned to do right out of college, which was selling. Because once again, I was having to, share all the work that we do and start all over. And, those cold calls, that experience that I've known so well, started up all over again in 2015.
Wow. So it was kind of like the next wave of your organization and your path of growth. So can you explain what you do as the founder and CEO in a super simple manner?
Everything. Okay. So look, here's the thing. We are a small boutique agency, and we are growing rapidly. And so as the leader of the agency, it is my job to figure out how to handle that growth. But additionally, I have to be involved as well in the actual implementation of the work that I'm out selling. And so my key roles are leading the vision for where we're headed. And I talk about you have to beat that drum every day, and you have to paint that picture every day for your team, for your clients, and for your prospective clients. Because I don't know what it takes someone to hear it 15 times before they actually absorb what it is that you do. So as the chief visionary, that's my role. I also sit in the place of sales. And so that's my job, is I carve out time every single day. And this may be a little more tactical than you wanted, but I literally time block on my schedule for prospecting. And that's, challenging in today's day and time where people don't have corporate phones anymore. And, you're scrounging for people's cell phones. And so I've gotten really creative in how I reach people, from sending them video messages on LinkedIn to clever taglines in an email. But at the end of the day, I want people to know that I'm a real person, and the businesses that we serve and our offerings can add a lot of value to the right clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think that white glove service, especially coming from you as the CEO, makes a huge difference. It is the responsibility of the leader to set the tone for the organization, and typically the organization's values come from the leader's values. Can you talk a little bit more about how you define your own values?
Yeah, I think for me, in defining our agency's core values, to your point, it comes from who I am. Leadership is top down. I don't always get it right. In fact, I get it wrong more times than I get it right, but I am certainly striving to be better and to be a better leader. But for us, our core values include solution-oriented, proactive, never settle. Those are just a few of them. We also believe in transparency, which distinguishes us from a lot of our competitors. And when I say transparency, I mean all the way down to we do a weekly budget meeting with every client, and they have full visibility to every single dollar we spend on their project to the penny. That might be the best use of my time, but I tell my clients we sleep better at night knowing that you know how your dollars are being spent. Those kinds of things, those core values come from who I am and what I believe in. Our internal mantra is be the solution to the problem and not the problem itself. And what that simply means is if we're going to tell a client no, we're going to come to the client with multiple solutions, and we're going to take ownership of that. Even when it's not necessarily our fault, we're still going to own it. I think there's a big lack of ownership today, and I see it all the time. And our clients talk about how refreshing it is that we come with the solution and that we're willing to own it, that we're willing to be a partner to them and to be in it with them. Those are some of the things that just make us stand out from our competitors.
So I love how you are so growth-minded. What drove the idea behind launching FierceLab, and can you explain what FierceLab is?
Sure. So FierceLab is an empowerment platform for entry to mid-level career-minded women, and we focus on 4 key pillars: career development, financial intelligence, mental health self-care, and risk-taking. So why did we found FierceLab, and why have we continued to pursue it for the last 5 years? So in 2019, the team at that time got together and said, hey, we're doing all these activations for these major brands, Nike, ESPN, Samsung, so on and so forth. And these are great, but we'd love to create something that is our own, that we get to truly shape and create something that we're invested in. Absolutely. it would be smart for an agency to have a property that they own. And through the course of having these conversations, which actually started in the fall of 2018 when we did our annual summit to prepare for the next year, we started to explore what they could be. And I felt very passionate about a part of my career where I felt very isolated and alone. So my 20s, and what I'm discovering from a lot of women, having now had FierceLab for 5 years and spent time talking to over 5,000 women, is that a lot of women felt isolated and alone in their 20s. Many women felt like everyone else had it figured out but them. There were so many moments in my 20s where I just didn't feel that I had the advice, the guidance, the counsel, the resources to be able to truly move myself forward in a productive way. So I often say I floundered a lot in my 20s, and I'm a high performer. I'm not accustomed to being mediocre, to be honest. In fact, I despise being mediocre. And I noticed that about myself in my 20s. But here's the thing. Some things happened. In my 20s, this was right around the time that people were creating websites and putting bios online. So I would go and I would read other women's bios, like, what has she done? What conferences does she attend? What awards has she won? You know, I was building a roadmap for myself. And when I could afford to, I'd fly across the country just to meet a woman that I felt could expand my horizon of what's possible. And so I started to put this little map together for myself so that eventually I did get to this place where I was able to start my own business and I was able to finally get my footing as an adult and start to see some success and not feel like I was just mediocre. But the interesting thing about that, Kelly, is I felt a lot of shame around not getting it right the first time. And so instead of sharing with women like, hey, these are all the things that I did to pull my own self up by my bootstraps and create this successful life, remember, I even said, like with my own agency, I quietly changed courses. I didn't broadcast that I'd done something different. So fast forward to the summer of 2019, I'm sitting at a friend's kitchen table, and this friend happens to be legally blind, and she is the one friend that even though she cannot see, she sees me more clearly and sees others in general more clearly than anyone else does. And we were talking, and she said, Tara, if you could do anything, what would you do? If you could give yourself permission to be anyone you wanted to be and do anything you wanted to do, what would that be? And I thought for a second, I took a deep breath because she just penetrates you with this question. And I said, I have something to say, and I would let my voice be heard. And from there, FierceLab was no longer just this little tiny passion project inside the agency. I committed right then and there to go on and to build it into what it is today, which is a podcast, corporate programming, a live event series, an app in the App Store, all free content, over 500 pieces of all original content that we've built. And this fall, we're launching a college tour because women tell us, this is what I wished I'd had when I was coming out of college. And boy, can I relate to that. So we're going and meeting young women where they are.
That is incredible. And I love how it is really rooted in your own experience as a young woman and turning that into empowering other young women. I remember that exact feeling of it was almost like you were untethered. You know, you didn't really have any grounding on mentorship or how do you show up or how do you build a career. It's really admirable that you're focusing on empowering young women specifically.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And for sharing parts of your own story. And untethered is such a great expression. That is exactly how it feels when you just feel so isolated and alone and like you're the only one, even though you probably instinctually know you aren't. It's like, but you still just don't know where to reach and who to grab to help you. And we want to be that place that young women can come to and have something to to latch onto and support them.
So going back to that last pillar, which was risk taking,
Yeah.
when you were in the thick of building your career, were there ever any doubts that you would succeed?
Oh, man. So I'm an optimist. I think you have to be an entrepreneur. Here's the thing. I know I'm destined for greatness and success. I know that. I'm built for it. I have the stamina for it. It's who I am. I have no doubt I will succeed. Have I succeeded? Sure. But is my measuring stick even longer? Yes. And so, look, when I stepped out and started my first business, not a shadow of a doubt, I knew I could be successful owning an event planning company. Did I question myself when I decided to change to an agency model? Absolutely not. Just went for it, did it. I'm a big believer in you've got to take action, massive action, and you've got to step out there, and you can't wait until you have every single answer. I talk about it with my team. We can't have all the dominoes lined up and still move everything forward. We can have multiple dominoes lined up and we can knock them down as we go, but we can't wait until we have that perfect pattern. We have to take action, even without all the answers.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that advice. And I think taking action, you could have the best strategy, but if you're not executing it, then it's just, plans on a paper.
Absolutely. Yeah. And something else about risk-taking, and the reason it's a pillar for FierceLab, is how often are women taught to be seen and not heard? And women tend to wait. They think that somebody is going to tap them on the shoulder and offer them the promotion and say, now's your time. Here it all is. And that's not how it works. How it works is that you step forward, that you take a risk, you take a chance. Yes, it's a risk, but you try and calculate it as best possible. And then you step forward and you try it. And we want women to know it's okay to step out there into the unknown and try the things that they want to try.
Right. It's called growing pains for a reason because it's uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. And it's in that discomfort that you find the strength to, push yourself and stretch yourself a little bit further.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, where you learn. But boy, I wish growth were easy. I wish it were comfortable. That would be so nice. And the truth is, it's not about that mountaintop, is it? It's about the climb to get up to the mountaintop. That's what's so important. And that's where the reward is.
Right. So what is the most rewarding part of your job today?
I love what I do. I love building something. Lately, the reward has been the growth that I'm experiencing as a leader. So 18 months ago, 24 months ago, I said, I'm not a very good leader, kind of crappy at it. And so I started trying to improve that, reading books, working with a coach. Then I took some time off of working with a coach. Then I started reading more books. And I'm continuing to try and grow and be better. And for me right now, I see how I'm growing as an entrepreneur and more specifically as a leader of people inside my organization. And that's fulfilling. It's gratifying. I'm not getting it right 100% of the time. In fact, I'm probably getting it wrong more than I'm getting it right. But I can see the path to the future. And that's really exciting to me.
So looking back, I know we had talked about this early on in the conversation, but what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
So I heard a woman say when I was in my 20s, and it stuck with me, get a compass and not a watch. Meaning, think about and focus on the direction that you're going in your career and don't worry about the time it takes to accomplish that, And that really stuck with me. And at first when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's catchy, but I don't think I really understood it. Now, having been in my career for over 20 years, I get it. Know the direction that you want to head and stop worrying about the amount of time that it's going to take to get there. The time is going to pass. The other thing is I would tell myself to find more joy. I'm on this big kick right now. I did it a few summers ago, and then I kind of have kept with it. And then this summer, I've been extremely intentional about finding moments of joy in every day. And I wish I had known that in my 20s. Look for the bright spots. Find the positive. Work on your mindset. Work on being positive.
Yeah.
The energy you exude into the world. And like read up on that. Figure out real quick. Do you have people in your life that are feeding your energy and moving you in a positive direction, or do you have people that are sucking the life out of you, taking your energy and invading it with their own negative energy? Those are things that I wish I'd known in my 20s and that I'd worked on those things. A gratitude practice every night. Put my head on the pillow and I tick through all the things that happened in the day that I'm grateful for. And I tell people sometimes it's a matter of, I'm just grateful I made it to this point today. And then other times it's a long, long list, you know? So, but it's not big stuff. It's the little things, you know? But you've got to find joy in all the small moments, because in truth, the small moments are all that we have.
Yeah, I love that. The small moments are actually the big moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so many of us get so caught up about, especially when you're like in a class or a cohort, and you graduate and you're looking around at your peers, and some are excelling and climbing the ladder pretty quickly, and you might feel stuck in whatever role you're in. But there is so much more to be gained from being present in that role and in that moment and the experiences that you're garnering.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know, to your point, how those experiences will become transferable skills later on.
That's right. Yeah. Sydney Umeri works for Meta in sports and brand partnerships, and I've had her on our podcast. She talks about nothing is wasted. It's like her advice to a young 20-year-old who might be in a job that they're not happy with. And really, it's applicable to anybody, regardless of how old you are. You know, you could be in a spot in your career where it's just not fulfilling you. And her point is nothing's wasted. You will be able to look back and pull from all of these moments into something new. You may just not be able to see it right now.
Right. So if you had to sum up your career in 3 words, what would those be?
All right. I wrote these down because I was like, oh, if I don't think about it. So daring would be the first word. Optimistic. I already told you I'm an optimist. And achievement. Motivated by achievement, for sure.
I love that. And I can see throughout your entire story how those shine through. Mm. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for coming on to the Career Slay podcast. I loved hearing your story, and I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun to talk about this and thread the needle from childhood until this moment in my life. And great to talk to you today. Thank you for having me, Kelly.
The Career Slay podcast is a co-production of Career Slay and Weld Reply. This episode was produced by Michael Burke, with editing by Ethan Weil and Michael Burke. If you like the show, subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're ready to level up, pivot, or lead with confidence, book a coaching discovery call with me at careerslay.com.